कंट्री में जो ब्रॉडर प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, पॉलिटिकल, इकोनॉमिक, कॉर्पोरेट, उसकी रिफ्लेक्शन है. And just by this measure alone, you will not drive the bears away. Once this measure is removed, there is a good chance कि जो selling, जो pent up selling of the last 10-15 days or whatever अब तो हफ्ता हो गया, that will come back and you will continue to see the negative trend in the market.
But you said that something had to be done, but why? I mean, if equity markets are falling, we've seen regional markets go down as well. तो कहीं और तो कोई changes नहीं हुई. You're saying कि debatable था जो changes हुए, but why the changes itself? I mean,
देखिए, regulators / central bank have been known to prop up asset markets in times of stress. आप सिर्फ US का example देख लें. Whenever there's been equity market meltdown, or in recent times a meltdown in housing market, the Federal Reserve has stepped in and cut interest rates. हमने 2001 में देखा US में, हमने अभी recently वापस देखा.
But equity markets के केस में ऐसा कुछ हुआ है?
हाँ, definitely. After the tech bubble collapsed in 2001, around 2000, that's when the Fed started to cut interest rates. So central banks have been known to target asset markets, especially equity markets. लेकिन understandably, हमारा central bank does not target asset markets for whatever reason, because our economy is much less developed than the US economy, and at the secondly, we don't have that space on the monetary side. काफ़ी inflationary environment around us. There's just no way for the central bank to consider monetary easing right now.
Right.
So in that environment, you must have other sorts of measures. Now, problem with this measure is that I fear, obviously I hope I'm wrong, is that this might lend more to the instability going forward.
Once your measures have changed.
Yes, once the measures.
But firstly, what was the reaction of your foreign clients when they heard this? एक general perception उनकी तरफ से क्या था on this?
Well, obviously we made them realize that this is a stabilization measure, that it's very temporary, it's only for a couple of weeks, and obviously a long-term investor must look beyond that and obviously look at the wider opportunities in the market, because everything said and done, the market is very cheap right now. In valuation perspective, from an earnings perspective, it's very cheap right now. But obviously a lot of them were discordant. They were not very happy about it. Especially you have to understand that कुछ fund structures होते हैं, उनकी कुछ अपनी requirements होती हैं. They are required to leave or exit a market whenever certain redemption comes up, or whenever they take a decision. But that inability to leave or exit a market, it creates a fairly negative sentiment.
Right. हम ahsen javed चिश्ती से अपनी गुफ्तगू जारी रखेंगे, and we're going to talk about जो long term implications हैं foreign investment की. उसके अलावा हम बात करेंगे जो FBR का जो target था of 1,000 billion, that has been met. So what is next for the FBI? उसके हवाले से भी हम मज़ीद तफसीलात में बात करेंगे. Stay tuned to Markets Today. It's today. आज कराची स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में हमने 95 पॉइंट्स की कमी देखी. KC 100 इंडेक्स was down and volumes again remained low. हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं ahsen javed चिश्ती in our studio. Now we're going to talk to ahsen, but अभी हमें फ़ोन पे ज्वाइन किया है Ali Rahim ने, who's the director at Mahmood Idris Qamar. What's your view on this?
Well, I think I personally thought 1 trillion is definitely achievable. 990 billion is the target, I thought, because the nominal growth rate in the economy, that's for everyone to see. And if nominal level पे देखें तो you expect tax revenue collection to go up by 15-17%.
Right.
Going forward, 1.2 trillion या जो भी नया target, it's not that ambitious either. दो तीन जो इनने measures लिए, obviously the GST increase. Secondly, उन्होंने जो measures लिए to expand the tax base, especially वो जो new measure announced किया, in which anyone who has what might be called black money, if they invested, they just give 2% and their previous tax liabilities are forgotten. So that I think will expand the tax base and probably lead to a lot of latent income. And thirdly, I think banks' profitability, which was very poor last year because of the FSP circular, there's a काफी low revenue collection रही है. And if you look at it, bank taxation has been a very big part of overall direct tax collection for the last 4-5 years.
Right.
Usme rebound आएगा, and that should improve as well. So 1.2 trillion is not difficult.
Right. Now coming to the growth target for next year, जो economic growth, जो GDP growth है around 5.5%. Do you think that's a pessimistic number? We've seen agriculture की performance बहुत ख़राब रही थी इस साल. It probably won't get worse. It's likely to improve. It can't do worse. Do you think that's one school of thought? The other school of thought is with oil at $140 a barrel, interest rates likely to go up, probably even more if that's the case. तो उसका overall growth पे क्या impact आता है? तो ये दोनों चीज़ें हैं which I would like your view on that.
Well, to be honest, अगर आप देखें last year the consumption and investment both held up quite well. लेकिन if you look at it, a holistic picture, the first 6-7 months there was a lot of noise, political noise बहुत ज़्यादा थी, but the actual impact on economy बहुत limited था. Oil price pass throughs कोई खास नहीं हुए थे, monetary tightening picked up towards the end of the fiscal year, not in the beginning part. It was fairly relaxed. So more or less, and on the whole, political risk जो था इस हद तक नहीं पहुंच गया था. So on the whole, the environment was holding up. So 6-7 months की जो period था, that really lent into the consumption investment performance. Now the thing is that we are starting this year on a fair note. If you go back 1 year, 1st July 2007, Pakistan started the year in a fairly good note. Yeah, Lal Masjid was around the corner, लेकिन we had just seen like $3-4 billion worth of FDI come in just the last 1 week of the year. इसमें सिंगटेल की ट्रांजैक्शन एकदम हो गई थी, बहुत सारे पैसे आ गए थे. सो जो इकोनॉमिक मोमेंटम थी काफ़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग थी उस वक्त बिगिनिंग ऑफ द ईयर. दिस टाइम वी स्टार्टिंग द ईयर एट अ मच मोर क्वाइटर नोट. सो आई थिंक 5.5% इज फेयरली रीजनेबल. आई वोंट बी सरप्राइज अगर इससे और नीचे हो.
ओके, एहसन से हम अपनी गुफ्तगू जारी रखेंगे. अब हमें ज्वाइन किया, दैट इज ट्रू नाउ.
Well, the way oil has been heading, I mean, just on a momentum basis, could easily cross $150 in the next couple of weeks. But I think oil is just not a supply story anymore. It's more or less a demand story. And अभी भी काफ़ी बड़ा disconnect चल रहा है as far as demand and supply goes. Governments around the world have been absorbing much of the price increase. And as you said, once that price freeze pass through, then only will we be able to tell whether demand will be able to maintain oil at current levels. अभी अगर आप broader emerging markets में देखें, so I think they're not absorbing oil at $140. I think oil is still being paid by the average person in these countries around $90 to $100. So the 40% increase they've not paid for. They've seen about, they heard about, but they haven't paid out of their own pockets. So like Pakistan, these countries will be passing on oil going forward, and as we see it in Pakistan, there will probably be a substantial impact on disposable income and eventually on demand itself.
Right, and now coming back to the market, now we've talked about low multiples, valuations are attractive, but the earnings growth, that's a big concern now, to at least to some people. आपको लगता है कि double-digit growth is very likely even now?
Well, I think if you look at it, हम लोग की जो projections हैं for FY09, they're still fairly solid. 14-15% earnings growth.
But those have come down from 22% to जो consensus मैं बोल रहा हूँ,
yeah,
not just PMA.
But you got to understand, एक बहुत बड़ा जो एक problem, जो सबसे बड़ा पाकिस्तान इस वक्त problem है, वो जो inflation problem है, it is a problem of boom times, right? In a slowing economy, normally inflation is not an issue. We might be in a stagflation scenario very soon, but on the whole, it is a problem for a booming economy. And अगर आप देखें corporate profitability, अगर आप analysts के खुद estimates देखें या corporate से खुद देखें, it's very directly linked to the inflation rate. If the economy can absorb inflation of 15%, then corporates can pass through prices of 15%. So more or less, that corporate profitability remains intact.
Right.
तो ये एक बड़ा वो contrast होता है before economic growth starts to impact corporate growth.
Right.
So probably we'll continue to see strong profit numbers going forward.
As in very briefly, your outlook on the market, do you think the market has bottomed out?
I think there is still, because of the current measures and because of some pent-up selling, we might continue to see some weakness in the market. It's very difficult to say where the bottom would be, but I think even at these levels, a lot of stocks have become very attractive. E&P stocks, fertilizer stocks, some cement stocks, and I think some banking stocks have been hammered for no rhyme or reason. So I think a lot of valuations have opened up there.
Right. Thank you so much, Ahsen Javed, Chisti, Head of International Sales, for joining us.